What's going on, guys? Happy Royal Rumble week and welcome back to #AskGSM episode 217 here today for January 24th, 2018. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well. And every single week right here on the show, I answer your questions from Facebook, Twitter, and the YouTube. If you want to send in a question, tweet me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook too at facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Leave a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question in the comment section down below on this very video. I'll include it in next week's edition. So like I said, big week upon us, folks. We had Raw 25 on Monday, which I was in attendance for, and I should specify at the Barclays Center, not the Manhattan Center. So I'll be talking quite a bit about that in today's episode, as well as the Royal Rumble coming up. We got TakeOver on Saturday, both of which I will be in attendance for. This is the most jam-packed week for me, wrestling-wise, since probably SummerSlam of 2016. I was at WrestleMania last year, WrestleMania 33 and TakeOver Orlando. I didn't go to a third show for another week and a half when I was at SmackDown. But this is the first week where I've been to 3 shows in the matter of a week since SummerSlam 2016, when John and I went to TakeOver Brooklyn 2. We went to SummerSlam that Sunday and Raw the next night. Crazy-ass weekend, well worth it, though. This will be no different. Raw 25... A lot of mixed thoughts from a lot of different people, a lot of mixed responses, both the positive and the negative, which I will be talking about here today, as well as a brief preview of the Royal Rumble. And speaking of which, I will be doing the same thing and a bit different with more official predictions and previewing the entire card for the Royal Rumble and TakeOver Philadelphia this coming weekend with the person I will be joining on the trip to Philly. We've had our tickets for fucking 6 months now for the Rumble. Mr. Marceau RJ, I've had his questions here on the document for a few hours now. I'll be talking about his questions soon enough. But we will be breaking down the full card for both shows this coming weekend on WrestleRant Radio tomorrow. Usually the show drops on iTunes and Nextdoor Wrestling on Thursdays at midnight, Wednesday to Thursday at midnight. I'm a bit busy today, as he is as well, as we prepare for the Royal Rumble. So the episode will be dropping, I think, a little later on Thursday, but you can subscribe to the show on iTunes. Simply search up WrestleRant Radio and Apple Podcast. You get every old episode dating back to October of 2013, nearly 5 years worth of podcast and archived episodes, and every new episode on Thursdays. Now, all the plugs are out of the way, guys. Let's get started here with your questions. Captain Sunshine from YouTube. I didn't like Raw 25, but it was the WWE Anniversary show I've come to expect and rant about how WWE clings to nostalgia or nothing new. And rants about how WWE clings to nostalgia or nothing new. So I won't waste time on complaints. What I wonder is what from this era will they use for nostalgia acts on Raw 50? That's a good question. I was thinking about that the other day, because they use nostalgia acts now largely from the Attitude Era. The people who got the biggest pops on that show were probably Trish Stratus, Stone Cold Steve Austin, obviously, above anyone else, and Eric Bischoff. All people who came up either in the Attitude Era or soon after. And obviously the Dudley Boys too, and they also kind of came up in the Attitude Era, so nothing different there either. I would imagine on Raw 50 we might get The Shield, or I don't know. Obviously John Cena, but even now he's a nostalgia act because he's been around for 15 years. That's a very good question, but I would imagine, maybe a Braun Strowman sighting. The Shield obviously have played a huge part in Raw's history over the last 5 years, and I assume they will continue to do so in the years to come. CM Punk, if they're on good terms with them by 25 years from now, what would that be? Let's see, 2038, 2043. If they're on good terms by that point, hopefully they can bring in CM Punk, even though he's going to be fucking 60 years old. So who knows? But that is a good question. I think about that a lot. What from today's era, assuming Raw is still around, and it should be, but you never know, would it even be on USA Network? What would they be doing 25 years from now? Did anyone think 25 years ago when Raw first started they would even make it to this point? Let alone be a 3-hour show and have as much content as the company does in 2018? Probably not. So I shudder to guess, not even excited, I shudder to guess, imagine even what is going to be going on in WWE 25 years from now. Will they have even more content? Will Raw be 5 hours by that point? I'm almost scared to find out. Their second question, I don't believe anyone should be ripped off to such a degree, but it's hysterical that WWE sold $1,000 tickets to their quote-unquote super fans and had them sit in a fake Raw so they wouldn't disrupt actual Raw with punk chants or whatever. Poor Frank the Clown hoping WWE does better next time, quote-unquote. That's what he said on Twitter. Is it bad of me to be amused by this? If it is bad of you to be amused by this, well, consider me a bad person too, because I saw the same thing that you did on Twitter from Frank the Clown and all the other fucking super fans, all the super fans, Brock Lesnar guy, Frank the Clown. You know what? There really is no real rational reason to not like those people, other than just the fact they're fucking annoying and being in the front row of every single Raw, whether they were comp tickets or they paid that much. How the fuck could you have that much money where you're at every single Raw and every single fucking pay-per-view in the front row? I mean, you know what? There's nothing really wrong with that. They're doing nothing wrong here, obviously. But there's just an unjustifiable hate that most fans, including myself, have for these fucking fans that think they can take away from the show showing up in their fucking gimmick shirts and gimmick makeup, dressing up like clowns, being actual clowns, even though they are clowns and goofs. I thought that was hilarious, especially considering I was at the Barclays Center where the real show took place. And you know what? I get it. WWE should have done a better job of splitting up the show between the two arenas. I know for people watching at home, it was a bit annoying. I really enjoyed the show. I didn't think it was an amazing episode of Raw, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was a good anniversary show. I thought it would have been cooler if they didn't advertise the people in advance, and it was more of a surprise when fucking like Eric Bischoff showed up or the Dudley Boys. But still, they all got good reactions, and it was a good show overall. Didn't really sell me on the Rumble. As a go-home show, it sucked. But it was still a good anniversary show, I thought, anyway. But yeah, you know what? I knew this going in. I fucking knew this. I would have gone to the Manhattan Center if the tickets weren't $400, $500. And that's my question. I tweeted that out on late Monday night on my way home from Brooklyn. Who the fuck would spend $1,000, let alone anything over $150, on a fucking episode of Raw? Why? I wouldn't even spend that much on a fucking pay-per-view ticket. I paid $150 for WrestleMania. If you pay more than that, that's fine. You want to be closer. Why the fuck would you spend more than that on an episode of Raw? I don't care if it's the 25th anniversary, if it's at the Manhattan Center, MSG. Raw, considering how lifeless the product has been for so fucking long now, why would anyone expect anything less? Especially with pro wrestling, and really any sort of sporting event or whatever, there's a very good chance it's not going to be good. Like, it's not guaranteed to be amazing. Yeah, the hype was huge, but just because it was built up as this huge show doesn't mean it's going to be great. You have to know there's a chance it's not going to be that good. I thoroughly enjoyed myself, but at the same time, I knew going in, when they advertised Taker and Michaels and those people for the Manhattan Center, I knew the real show was taking place in the Barclays Center. When they announced Stone Cold, I knew immediately that he was showing up in Barclays. They would not put Stone Cold Steve Austin at the fucking Manhattan Center. I get putting Taker there, and DX, and Michaels, and all those other guys, Scott Hall, because, you know, they were there for the first few Raws, for the first few years. It makes sense. Everyone else, why the fuck would they be at the Manhattan Center? You know, I thought the get-up and the way they set up the Raw and the way they made it look like the first ever Raw 25 years ago was amazing. Don't get me wrong. I feel like they should have gone there more. But just the idea of it was a really cool idea in theory. Execution was terrible because no one wants to pay fucking money, whatever it is, $5, $800, to an episode of Raw and watch it on a big screen as it airs from another arena. No one wants to do that. For us at the Barclays, it wasn't that big of a deal because first of all, I knew Taker and I knew DX were going to Manhattan Center. And then also because we got the rest of the show and all the other way better moments than whatever happened at the Manhattan Center, in my opinion, the Manhattan Center. So, anyway, I thought it was hilarious that WWE essentially trolled those super fans like Frank the Clown and Brock Lesnar guy and all the other fucking fans that shell out all this money. Why? Why would you pay $1,000 on tickets? You're so stupid. That's so dumb. Yes, WWE, I get it. I understand it. Should have done a better job of giving those fans more of a show. But unless Taker was fucking walking around the arena, greeting every single fan and making out them, it's not worth $1,000 to go to an episode of Raw. Unless they give you free merch. Yo, I got a free chair. Who cares? Who cares? So I thought that was so silly. I knew that going in. Again, I may have gone to the Manhattan Center if they weren't way overpriced. But to me, to see a fucking old set and The Undertaker cut a forgettable promo is not worth $800. And anyone who pays that much money, regardless of what is advertised, is out of their fucking minds. Let this be a lesson to all to never pay an absurd amount of money on Raw tickets, SmackDown tickets, pay-per-view tickets. Again, if you want to treat yourself and you want to be close to ringside, whatever. You know what? That's fine. If you want to do that, that's whatever. But don't expect you're going to get a great show. You know what you're getting into with the WWE. It's not going to be an amazing show every single time. It's just not going to be. So, the company should have given me a better show. Like, who the fuck cares? Like, you paid your money to be there. They didn't force you to be there. You paid the $800. Like, those are the real morons, in my opinion. You pay that much money to go to a Raw. If you paid as much money as I did, maybe $30 to $50. I don't even remember. I pay that much money all the time. I never sit. I mean, if it's a good show and I want to be, I mean, Raw 25, I guess I could have paid more, but I was up top and I enjoyed the fuck out of it. I don't care where I am in the arena, as long as I'm having a good time. The idea that, you have to pay all this much money to get the best seats, it doesn't matter if you're sitting front row or in the fucking janitor's closet. The show could still very much suck. Doesn't matter whether you're there or not. So yeah, the company could have done a better job, but again, I hate to keep on repeating myself, but it really annoyed me that people were getting so upset about this. It's like you had to know they weren't going to emanate most of the show from the Manhattan Center. And just to pay that much money for the tickets alone is beyond moronic. So stupid. It's beyond dumb. One of the dumbest things I've seen in quite some time. And wrestling fans can do a lot of dumb things, but this has got to be chief among them. Anyway, Brandon A. from YouTube. I actually watched 205 Live this week, and when Cedric Alexander came out, I thought out loud, wow, his theme music would be so epic if he was over. I also believe this about Sheamus, who I believe has a super underrated theme and entrance. Who do you believe this applies to? I completely agree. Alexander obviously could be more over than he is, but I love his theme song. I said that last week. I love the Sheamus theme song too. I had that stuck in my head a couple weeks ago for whatever reason, but yeah, he's got a great theme song and a great entrance. I mean, the Cesaro Sheamus entrance is cool too, but when he was on his own before he joined up with Cesaro, he had a great entrance on his own too. So hopefully, when they break up at some point, he can go back to doing that. I'm still a bigger fan of Cesaro, but Sheamus has got a badass entrance and theme. Who else does that apply to? I don't know if it's necessarily underrated because I've seen a lot of love for it in the past, but Baron Corbin. I know there's a lot of people who aren't Baron Corbin fans. A lot of people, but I think the theme is great. I'm a Baron Corbin fan anyway, but and I enjoyed his old theme, but I think the new theme is badass with the lyrics, and it comes as no surprise it was one of, if not the last real creation of Jim Johnston in WWE before he got cut from the company a few months ago. I think he played a big role in creating that theme song. So yeah, I love the theme. I think it's great for Corbin. In my opinion, super underrated. Some people don't like it, but I've seen a lot of love for it anyway, so I'm not really sure if it's underrated. Same thing for the next person, Mike Kanellis too. You know, I said it last week when I was discussing those 10 theme songs that someone gave me to rank, that he's got a really, really good theme. I heard it on Monday. I forgot we were going to even hear it. I thought we would hear Maria's old theme song with the legs like that or whatever it is. The theme that she, here she comes again, like that theme. We didn't hear that. We heard the Mike Kanellis theme, which is still really, really good. I like that theme a lot. But it's super underrated, and it's a great entrance because we never fucking see the guy on TV. He hasn't been on SmackDown in months. So I would say that's underrated. I mean, people loved it when it first came out, regardless of what their thoughts are on Mike Kanellis. But I think he's got a great theme song. It's so cheesy. I think it's awesome. His next question, if you had to pick two teams from NXT to be in the Mixed Match Challenge, who would you pick? This is a slam dunk for the first one. Johnny Gargano and Candice LeRae. She just got signed, so it would make sense. For the second team, I was trying to think of real life couples. I like how they paired up Jimmy Uso and Naomi, who are married in real life. Same thing with Rusev and Lana. I like that. And also the dream pairings. I really like the pairing of Becky Lynch and Sami Zayn, even though I know they're getting bumped from the tourney next week. Whatever. But yeah, I think those are two good teams. a few good teams. From NXT, like I said, Gargano and Candice LeRae. Also, just because, I don't know, they're really, actually, you know what? I was going to say Eric Young and Nikki Cross would be a very good team given their chemistry on TV. But also, I don't know how I forgot about this, Andrade Cien Almas and Zelina Vega. She's the wrestler anyway. I know she's been solely managing Almas in recent months. But she'd be a great, tag team partner. She'd be like the Lana for Rusev. I know Lana's been wrestling more recently, but she's awful. Vega's way better. But yeah, Almas and Vega would be a great team too. Next question from Brandon. Keep or erase in history? CM Punk, AJ Styles, and William Regal, or Edge, Chris Jericho, The Miz, and Kevin Owens? Wow. That's a tough one. I know Brandon obviously knows me too well because those are all my favorites right there from past and present. Wow. That's really tough. You forgot Christian. Christian would be in there too. But I know I did one of these like the push repackage release ones that we do a lot here on the show. Someone did that for Punk, Christian, and Regal. It might have been Brandon or someone else, but that was a tough one too. That was a while ago. Anyway, I would have to keep Punk, AJ, and Regal. Those guys kept me fans, really. Regal got me into wrestling. Punk made me stay in wrestling as a wrestling fan, especially in 2011, 2012. And AJ, I've always loved wrestling, but really reignited my love for wrestling and coming over to WWE. And I always loved AJ and TNA anyway, and Ring of Honor. He got me into Ring of Honor. He made me stay for TNA many years ago. Even checked out some New Japan stuff because of AJ, so I would have to keep those three. I love Edge. I don't know if he's in my top, definitely not my top 5 favorites, but he's up there. Jericho would be. It's tough to erase Jericho and Miz. Owens is one of my favorites too, but not as much as the others that you mentioned. But it's hard to erase Punk, AJ, and Regal, so I'm going to keep those three and erase Edge, Jericho, Miz, and Owens. Next question, also from Brandon. At the end of the day, would you consider yourself a fan of these non-fan favorite wrestlers? John Cena, Nikki Bella, and Roman Reigns. Nikki Bella, absolutely not. I don't hate the Bellas as much as I once did. I don't really hate the Bellas at all anymore, actually. I got a lot of flack from fans about that. Like, I know RJ, he must be listening right now. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. It was like 3 years ago. I would write articles and put out tweets, like not to troll anyone, because I just genuinely did not really care for the Bellas. And I would put these articles out, and people got so angry because the Bella Twin fan base in recent years has not been as bad, probably because they haven't been on TV as much. But they were like fucking jumping down my throat for jumping on me just for all the hate that I was spewing about the Bellas, which I may have not should have been doing, but whatever. I just didn't really care for the Bellas. They're tolerable now. I'm not a fan of them at all beyond that. Cena and Roman. If I had to choose, I'm a bigger fan of Roman. I don't know if I would consider myself a Roman Reigns fan. Here's the thing. Liking someone and being a fan of them, I feel like are two very different things. There's a lot of people I like, but are not necessarily fans of. To me, my criteria anyway, if I have a t-shirt for that person, and you guys know I have a lot of wrestling t-shirts, then I'm a fan of them. Okay, maybe not for some people. Like Enzo, I used to be a big fan. I have his t-shirt, and then he just fell off a fucking cliff, and I wish I could throw the thing in the garbage, and I very well might. But I do not have a Roman Reigns shirt. I have a Shield shirt that I got recently, not a Roman Reigns shirt, or a John Cena shirt. The closest I came to being a John Cena fan was in 2015 with the U.S. Open. Beyond that, I am still not a Cena fan. So no, probably to all of them. Though I will say I like Roman more than the other two, I still can't say I'm a Roman Reigns fan, though. And next question, also from Brandon. Who else are you a fan of that is not really a fan favorite? Zack Ryder, I know people really don't care too much about anymore, but I'm still a big Zack Ryder fan. Have been for close to a decade now, but still a big Ryder fan. You know what? A lot of people love him now. He gets a lot of love from the IWC, from internet wrestling fans, whatever. Not so much years ago, when I first started becoming a fan of his in like late 08, early 09. For many, many years, people were not a fan of his, and that would be The Miz. The Miz was not a big fan favorite at all when it came to the internet and stuff like that. People only really started to show love for The Miz after the pipe bomb promo, the scathing talking smack rant from a few years ago. That was when people really started to turn the tides with The Miz and started to embrace him, so to speak, or become a fan of his, whatever. Though he's always really been quite great on the mic. Maybe not so much in the ring. But I've always been a huge Miz fan, if that counts for your question. Emmanuel A. from YouTube. I saw the Raw 25th anniversary on Hulu, which kept the Austin McMahon segment, Undertaker's promo, Miz and Reigns, Elias Cena, DX Club Revival, and the Strowman, Kane, Lesnar segments, along with the Bliss Flares segment backstage, Elias Jericho, and the Styles Mean Gene backstage promo, as well as the female legends and GM appearances. All in all, I thought it was okay. Would it be better or worse if I saw the rest of the show? Definitely worse. I think what they included in there, from what you had said, made the show quite great. I think if you had those things alone, it was a really, really good show. I still think it was a very good show, at least in being there, personally. But the other stuff they included that were just completely pointless. I can't believe they wasted as much time as they did on the fucking Titus Worldwide and Slater and Rhino match. And now I know it led to the Dudleys coming out, but they wasted like 5 minutes on that shit. And I realized they had to do that because Enzo got suspended and now he's fired. But they had to rewrite the show, take the cruiserweights out, and put them in instead. But it was still like, why the fuck are we watching this right now? So at least they came out. It didn't save the show or anything, but it was a good segment that they did not include in Hulu, which is fine. The women's tag team match, complete waste of time. Glad to hear they excluded that from the Hulu replay for Raw. I mean, I like the women's division. Asuka beating the shit out of the other women was great, but the match itself was a total waste of time. No one gave a shit. And it was even worse because everyone around John and I was sitting on their hands, and who can blame them? So are we. But the entire fucking time, for as long as that match lasted, there was this annoying ass girl 2 rows behind us in the very last row, because we were way up there, that was saying, the Riot Squad sucks. Even though it was fucking Absolution, calling Liv Morgan, or calling Mandy Rose Liv Morgan. And she would not shut the fuck up. And no one would say anything, because she was like, it sounded like she was 10 years old. She may have been 15 or whatever. But it was a girl, so no one was going to say anything. But it's like, Jesus, bitch, shut the fuck up. And it was only made worse by the match going as long as it did. But overall, I would say it was good. I would say don't even bother watching the rest. Maybe aside from like the Dudleys thing on YouTube real quick. But I'm glad to hear they included the backstage stuff and the appearances from all the people you mentioned in the segments, because those were the real highlights of the show. I feel like when you really break it down, I thought it was a really good show, but there was just some stuff that just did not serve a purpose. Anyway, second question from Emmanuel. Does AJ Styles know that Kami means God in Japanese, meaning calling him Kevin and Sammy Kami would translate to him calling them gods? I guess not. Which is weird because AJ spends so much time in Japan, not to say that he knows the fucking Japanese language, but you would think that Nakamura would go like, hey dude, Kami means God. I'm sure they probably realize that, and the creative writers have no idea because they've been booking AJ to look like a fucking doofus in this feud. The whole Kami thing, regardless of what it means, is so stupid. It's so WWE, but it's so stupid. Stop calling them Kami. That's so annoying. It's like, it's almost not as bad, not nearly as bad, but it's up there with fucking Tater Tots from Roman Reigns or Sparkle Crotch from Seth Rollins. Ugh, terrible. Who fucking, I know who writes this shit, but it's like, who would possibly think that putting that down on a piece of paper would be a good idea for a fucking script for someone to say? Terrible. Elena the Y from YouTube. Remember when Enzo Amore tried to hit on Lana and made Rusev angry back in late 2016? Maybe Rusev was onto something. Hey, you got a good point there. You got a good point. All I'll say is that Nia Jax, she dodged the bullet. At RJ_Marceau, Mr. Marceau, my brother, ready for Royal Rumble weekend coming up. His question was, he's got a few questions here. Do you think if Ronda Rousey wins the Women's Royal Rumble, that it's like a slap in the face of the other women who have actually been wrestling for the past few years, especially since Ronda isn't the same draw she once was? Now, this is kind of a two-part question because I do want to dissect that last part. Now, RJ, you know, my man, that you're a huge MMA fan, obviously. You would know better than anyone. But I gotta disagree. She's still a big draw. I know she hasn't fought in over a year. Okay, maybe not like in the UFC world. Maybe not in MMA. I feel like if she fought again, it would not be nearly as high of a buy rate as it was for her last fight or the fight before that when she initially lost a few years ago, which it's crazy to think it's been like almost 2.5 years since she first lost. She fell off the fucking face of the earth for a long time. But Yeah, if she ever fought again, the buy rate would just not be anywhere close to what it was initially, to the last time that she fought. But I said this before, maybe not on this show, but like in other outlets and stuff like that. I know I said on Randy Cruz's show like last week, but Ronda Rousey is still a big draw in the wrestling world. Ronda Rousey, regardless of whether you think she belongs in WWE, whether you are looking forward to seeing her wrestle, which you know is going to happen, it's pretty much a done deal. But when it comes to Rousey, this is a fact, pretty much a fact. She is still a bigger star than 90% of the roster. That's why they do fucking part-timers. This is why they bring in people like The Rock all the time and Stone Cold Steve Austin. Because the reactions they receive are huge, and they also get huge mainstream publicity. Ronda Rousey would be huge publicity for WWE. Like, not even a fucking question. Because it's like renewed interest in Ronda Rousey to see how she's going to do and, you know, how she's going to fare against the women of the WWE. And it's something new for her. So it's obviously going to make huge headlines when she shows up in the Rumble or whenever it's going to be. I know, like I've said before, people have reported this, that she's out filming a movie right now, so the chances of her showing up aren't too likely, but she could always show up after the February pay-per-view or the March pay-per-view, whatever the fuck, depending on what show she's going to. But Ronda Rousey, at the end of the day, maybe not to you and me, RJ, maybe not to anyone else listening to this, but at the end of the day, any casual fan walking up and down the street, if you say, would you rather see a Ronda Rousey match or a Roman Reigns match? Or maybe not even that. Like, I'll say Ronda Rousey or AJ Styles. They'll say Ronda Rousey all day long because they don't know who AJ Styles is. They don't know who Roman Reigns is. Maybe John Cena. But beyond that, they know who Ronda Rousey is. And they know previously that she used to kick a lot of ass. And maybe in WWE she could do the same thing, especially now that she doesn't have to fucking fight for real. And is, you know, it's all, you know, scripted and whatnot. But Ronda Rousey is going to be a huge draw for WWE when she comes in. Like, there's no question about it. I'm not saying that she's going to be the equivalent to Floyd Money Mayweather from 10 years ago in that feud of the Big Show, which, again, people could say what they want about Mayweather, but the guy did huge business for WWE that year. Huge business. That feud was so well done. It was a super hot angle. The match was actually really, really good. And the WrestleMania got a big buy rate, so largely because of him. Ronda Rousey, not to say that she would do the same success for WWE, but I think it would come close. Now, does she deserve to win the Rumble? And would it be a slap in the face to the other women? Yeah, absolutely. Like, that I agree with. That. Like, it's one way to make a big splash by having her win the first ever Women's Rumble and whatever. Like, I could see why it would make sense. And not to say, like, in us being there, and RJ and I being there, I would not boo that. I think it'd be pretty cool to see Ronda Rousey debut in person and possibly win the Rumble. She's not going to debut in the Rumble and then lose. She's either going to debut and win or not show up at all. So I would save her for a later point. Ronda Rousey, any angle involving Rousey is going to sell itself. So I completely agree that it is kind of slap in the face to the other women about making... I mean, the build of the match has sucked anyway, but about making history, all this other shit. All these women that have been scratching and clawing to make this women's evolution work for years now, just to have Rousey come in and win it. Maybe that's part of her character. She doesn't give a shit about Becky Lynch. She doesn't give a shit about Bayley or Sasha Banks or whoever the fuck else from Raw or SmackDown. She's here to make money. She doesn't give a fuck. Like Shayna Baszler, same thing. Which is why I feel like Shayna Baszler works so well right now in NXT. She's only been there for a cup of coffee, but so far, she feels like the real deal. The real deal. So, I'm looking forward to seeing her in WWE, but I don't need to see her win the Women's Rumble. Because she can walk in and declare on night one that she wants a title shot, and she'd get it. She doesn't need to win the Rumble. It's like the same thing with Roman Reigns. Like, I could see why it would make sense if he won the Rumble, but it doesn't need to happen. There are other ways to get from point A to point B with these people in major WrestleMania matches. They don't need to win their respective Rumbles. Rousey, same thing. She can go on to do whatever she wants at WrestleMania, but she doesn't need to win the Rumble. Give that to Becky Lynch or Asuka or somebody else. I don't want to say anyone but Ronda, because I'd rather have Ronda win than fucking like Tamina or Lana or Alicia Fox or Dana Brooke, who you know aren't going to win anyway, but I'd be lying if I said, oh, anyone but Ronda, because no, that's not necessarily the case. But there are more deserving people, and I do agree it would be a slap in the face to those other women who have been building up this women's revolution for so long now. His next question, how crucial do you think the language barrier that both Asuka and Shinsuke Nakamura face with their lack of English will affect their pushes or careers? For both of them, it's different. Now, I know Brandon had brought this up a few weeks ago, and I talked about it before with Nakamura, where he had mentioned the criticism where, do you think that maybe because his English is kind of sort of terrible? Because the promo that he cut last night, not really all that good. But anyway, like with this English not being there, or at least where it should be, do you think he wouldn't, he might not win the Rumble? And I was like, yeah, that's a very valid point, because he's going to be involved in a lot of promos leading up from Rumble to WrestleMania if he was to win the Rumble. I know we all want to see AJ and Nakamura, and I'm still, begging for that match. I'm still clamoring for AJ Nakamura for the championship of Mania. To me, there is no bigger money match for the belt of Mania than AJ Nakamura. Save for AJ and Daniel Bryan or whatever, but we know that's not happening. But still, I think Nakamura and AJ, if it is to happen, the guy's going to be talking quite a bit between now and WrestleMania. So I could see why that would be, why there would be some skepticism revolving Nakamura winning the Rumble or being a top guy on SmackDown. It is something that can improve in time. And as I said before in addressing this situation a few weeks ago, where if they gave him better material to work with, where he wasn't spewing all this fucking garbage every single week, he might be a bit better off as opposed to this scripted trash. With Asuka, though, I think it's a bit different. I don't think it's going to matter really for her at all. Nakamura was better off in NXT because they didn't have him talk really all that much, and also because the scripts weren't terrible. The material he was given to work with wasn't atrocious. Asuka, the same thing. She hasn't cut a blowaway promo on Raw since she got called up a few months ago. But with the women, it's different. Because with the women, they're not cutting promos every single week. I know Alexa Bliss usually is, but talking is her strong suit. Wrestling is not. Asuka, kind of the opposite. Well, wrestling is her strong suit, and the over-the-top personality kind of does the talking for her. Same thing for Nakamura, but you gotta realize, with the women and with the men, there obviously is a drastic difference there with how much they're allowed to talk. With Bliss and the women and Asuka, they're talking for maybe a minute or two before they're getting interrupted or they're doing a backstage segment. It really doesn't matter. They're not opening Raws every single week. They're not closing Raws with promos and contract signings every single week. The occasional opening or the occasional close, then yeah, I get it. But other than that, they're not really, called upon to talk all the time, or at least as much as the men. So with Nakamura, we see fucking talking segments every single week on this show. At the beginning of SmackDown, at the end of SmackDown, in the middle of SmackDown, all the fucking time. Talk. Would Nakamura really do all that well? I'm not saying that because of that they shouldn't push the guy, but it is something to keep in mind, though, where it's not going to really matter too much for Asuka because she's a, mysterious, has a lot of mystique about her. She's a mysterious personality where she doesn't really have to talk all too much anyway. With Nakamura, it's a bit different because he is doing these backstage interviews in the promos at the beginning of SmackDown and the end of SmackDown. These quick, I'm going to win the Rumble, and even that isn't all that good. Like, they filmed him having him say, I'm going to win the Rumble last week, and even that was a terrible promo. That was fucking 30 seconds long, so I don't know. I guess we'll see, but I think that will be a detriment for Nakamura, absolutely. It's going to be a roadblock where hopefully he can improve in time. Asuka, I don't think it's going to really affect her push at all. Next question from @Jeremy8911 from Twitter. Do you think they should cancel the Cruiserweight division and split up the guys in a Raw, SmackDown, and NXT? At this point, I'm going to say, yeah, they won't. They're bringing in, I'll talk about this soon enough. Someone asked me about the Cruiserweight division and what's next for them, but they are bringing in a GM. So obviously they're not splitting up the Cruiserweight. They're not gonna institute a 205 live GM before canceling the show altogether. Like, if they were going to cancel, they probably would have done it by now, and they also had a pretty successful tour. It really wasn't much of a tour. They had 2 dates. But I only really heard good things about it when they toured. I think it was Lowell, Mass, where I had gone to NXT a few months ago and also about a year and a half ago, and Ring of Honor back in 2016, and I think Poughkeepsie too on Sunday. So they had a pretty decent tour, and that was before fucking Enzo got cut from the company 2 days later, and they don't even have a champion right now, so the timing was kind of perfect, because if it happened before the tour, they would have been fucked. But anyway, at this point, They got to keep the division. They have good guys there, but no one cares. A lot of these people, they're just very good wrestlers, but no one gives a fuck about any of these people because they weren't given a reason to care from the get-go. Like, John and I were talking about this. We were watching Main Event this past week. Not willingly. I mean, I guess we were, but they tape Main Event before Raw every single week on Monday nights. We were watching this Main Event taping. I think it was Jack Gallagher and... God, I have no idea. I know it was Kalisto and Gran Metalik versus Jack Gallagher and maybe... Not Drew Gulak. I don't know. I honestly have no idea. Maybe it was Tony Nese or some shit. I don't remember. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make here is that we were watching the match and we were having this discussion that, like, anything they're doing, we see in every other fucking match anyway. I see Luke Harper do dives all the time. I see Usos do super kicks all the time. What makes these matches different? What we saw in the Cruiserweight Classic 2 years ago was different. I've talked about this a million times. I don't want to beat down a dead horse here, but nothing about the current Cruiserweight division screams special at all, except for the silly ropes on Tuesdays, which they have since done away with on Raw, thank God, because it looks so dumb. But at this point, yeah, I think they would be better off splitting them off, and I think Gallagher would be a good heel in a tag team with Kendrick or on his own. Alexander should be a mid-card champion. The guy was born for the Intercontinental or United States Championship. The Cruiserweight division has a very low ceiling, where the guy is like a Tommy. Now he's just phoning it in, it feels like. It just, no one really feels special, like, at all, whatsoever. And it's a big problem. So yeah, they're not going to split up the guys yet. But yeah, I would just scrap the division. 205 Live is not must-see TV. Giving them a GM might help, especially if it's a big name. But as of right now, I just don't really see what the what the point in keeping the division around is. I think they'd be better off in NXT. Maybe cut a few of them, like Tony Nese. The guy's a good wrestler, but like, who the fuck cares beyond the ab gimmick? The guy has no character at all. I mean, most of the people don't have a character, but I think Alexander has more potential to be something in this company than Tony Nese. I think Drew Gulak has a lot of potential, but these people can only go so fucking far on 205 Live. That's the issue. At least on Raw, SmackDown, NXT. If they only get to be a undercard act, then whatever, but it's better than having them compete in front of crowds that just don't care. His second question, do you think it'd be better to have just gotten Sami Zayn versus AJ Styles for the WWE Championship at the Royal Rumble, since the two actually have better chemistry? You know what? A one-on-one AJ-Sami match would have been wonderful, because that one-on-one SmackDown main event on Tuesday I thought was great. They had a really good match last night. The thing with AJ and Owens, I know they had a string of like very underwhelming matches last year. Maybe not super underwhelming, but like they weren't what they should have been. They were good. They weren't great. The thing with those two, I don't know if it's a lack of chemistry so much as how the feuds were booked. Now, I know that by this point they've had like a ton of matches, but the feud last year was always ending with these terrible finishes. A count out, a fucking botch at Battleground, interference from Shane McMahon, all this other shit. And it was the only really, really good match they had last year was the one they had with Jericho. The three-way on SmackDown, because they didn't have any authority involved. No Shane, no Daniel Bryan. And they weren't being overshadowed. And it had a clean finish. What a fucking concept. They had two matches, I think, in 2016. AJ and Owens did. And they were wonderful. Like, when AJ first got to WWE, they had one match on Raw, another match on SmackDown. Maybe it was the other way around, but it was right before WrestleMania. And they had another match, I think, in like a Money in the Bank qualifying match or something like that, like in May of 2016. All three matches were outstanding. So I know they can have a very good match. It's just that in the feuds that they've been put in, with what they were doing over the summer, and now with the fucking authority figures being overshadowed and the terrible finishes, it's the same thing every single week. And they're not allowed to go out there and have the great match I know they're capable of. Styles and Zayn, again, no real interference at all, and they have a great match. Again, what a fucking concept. So it's not really that they don't have chemistry, but I understand what you're saying at this point. The handicap match does nothing for me. The fact that Owens and Zayn are on the same page about both being WWE champion and not just one being champion seems a bit weird. AJ comes across like a total idiot in this feud. The whole handicap thing, I'm not a big fan of handicap matches anyway. Doing one on pay-per-view for a world championship, that to me just screams lazy writing. But yeah, an AJ Zayn match one-on-one would have been great. I guess we could still get that if they deem Owens unable to compete, because that's the reason why the match lasted so short. on Tuesday was because he's been hurt for a little bit, and he's been dealing with his back injury. The fact that he was laying out on the ground for the entire match between AJ and Sammy, that was obviously just playing up the injury. Otherwise, AJ wouldn't have attacked him. That was all storyline. But he should be able to go. He should be able to go in that match on Sunday. But the good news is that if it still is a handicap match, which it should be because they've been building it up as such for so long now, and we just got AJ and Sammy 1-1 on SmackDown. At least if they do the handicap match, then you're getting AJ and Sammy 1-1 for most of it. Because if Owens is still banged up by that point, they're probably not going to have him in the ring for long periods of time. So that's the upside. So I'm looking forward to that. At the Average Grunt, also from Twitter, do you think there will ever be a promotion crazy enough to have a 2 to 3 hour Iron Man match as their entire show? Also, do you think there could ever be a one match card in general? Is there still a dream match left that's big enough to pull that off? That's a great question. To answer the second question first, in wrestling, currently, unless it involves Stone Cold Steve Austin, I would say no. If they did a one-match show with Cena and Rock, it probably would have been huge. They probably could have gotten away with it. Obviously not for a WrestleMania. But if they sold for like a separate event, that was just Rock and Cena. It belonged to WrestleMania, obviously, and they did right by that feud and by the match the first time. But if they did have a show that wasn't WrestleMania, and it was just Rock and Cena, yeah, it would still be huge. That would still be huge, no doubt. Because it was a dream match for a very long time. As was, like Hogan and Stone Cold, or Stone Cold and Punk, Stone Cold and Cena. Even if it was like AJ and Shawn, I don't think they could get away with it because it doesn't have that same mainstream appeal. Yeah, a lot of wrestling fans would go to see Shawn Michaels back, but even if it was Daniel Bryan, I don't think that if it was a one-match show, an entire card, yeah, for sure. But a Daniel Bryan return match as a one-match show, I don't think it would have that same mainstream feel that Rock and Cena did. So I'm going to say no. The reason why McGregor and Mayweather last year was so big was because they were two mega names coming from two different worlds. I guess you could do that, maybe but then again, Rousey is still a big draw in WWE. Outside of WWE, again, it would still get a lot of publicity, but it's not like if she was in her prime and she came over to face, Charlotte or something. That would be pretty big. 2018, probably not. So, between two wrestlers, Rock is a wrestler, but he was more of like a mainstream, pop culture icon by the time the match happened in 2012. That was a bit different. But McGregor and Mayweather was so big because they were two different people, two huge names from two separate worlds. And they had been building it up for so long, for so many months, well over a year, that it had to happen at some point. I didn't even watch the rest of the show. Who could have possibly cared less about the rest of that boxing card? The main event was what really people, piled in to see that night. And if it was only that fight, people still would have gone in to see it, regardless of how short it was, because it was a huge money draw. To answer the first part of your question, is there ever going to be a promotion crazy enough to do a 2 to 3 hour Iron Man match as their entire show? In WWE, in a mainstream organization, probably not. I know, actually, Ring of Honor had done something similar a few years. I think it was Ring of Honor anyway. It might have been Bryan Danielson, maybe Cesaro, Claudio Castagnoli, maybe. It was I think it might have been Nigel McGuinness. Either way, because I know Daniel Bryan brought it up in his book when I was reading that last summer, and he brought up how it was like a 2 out of 3 falls match, but it lasted like 2 to 3 hours. Like it wasn't a 2 out of 3 falls 1 hour match. Like I think Bryan was hoping to do like a fall an hour or something like that. He said. I think they actually had to cut it short because he noticed that people were getting restless. Like people don't even want to sit through an whole episode of Raw, a 3-hour Raw with all these legends on it. What makes you think someone would want to watch a 2 to 3 hour Iron Man match? You know what I mean? I just don't think it would work with today's wrestling fans and their short attention spans. So probably not, at least not in WWE. Maybe on an indie show if they wanted to try it. I don't know if it would work, but they'd have to get really, really creative. Again, Bryan tried it with someone, I think, in Ring of Honor. But Ring of Honor is different. Their style is different. In WWE, that would never work. Nor would they ever do it. But I think it could happen one day if it hasn't happened already. I think, like I said, I think they've done a 2 out of 3 falls match. It was an Iron Man match, but it might as well have been. Like years ago with Bryan and whatever. And they wanted to split up the falls into doing one an hour. And I think Bryan noticed that the fans were just like, oh, just end this already. They were getting bored or they were leaving. So they just sped up the process and finished it up in like maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours, whatever it was. But anyway, I don't think WWE would ever do that, nor should they. In indie promotion, there's a decent chance. It's worth the risk, but it would have to be like 2 of the best in the world. Like, you can't just put any 2 people in that position because people would leave in a half hour if they weren't getting, what they paid to see. If it wasn't an entertaining match, they would leave after like 20, 30 minutes. His second question, since Raw 25 happened recently, I'll ask you this. Which was the worst time for Monday Night Raw, 2002 to 2003 or 2009 to 2010? On one hand, you had the peak of Triple H's reign of terror, but on the other hand, you had the anonymous Raw GM and all those guest hosts. That's a good question. Of those 2, I'm going to say the worst time had to have been 09-2010 for Raw, because I know SmackDown was great in 02, but even Raw, I mean, again, like you said, the Triple H Reign of Terror was not a great time period, but there were still enough gems going on Raw at that time to make it watchable. 09-2010, there was fucking nothing. Absolutely nothing. I mean, maybe a few things here and there, like the Nexus, which was quickly squashed anyway. But it was the same people on top. Cena, Triple H, Randy Orton. That was really it from 09 to 2010. Anything good they had going, like the Legacy or whatever, anything that was good got squashed immediately. Maybe The Miz, but The Miz alone did not make WWE must-see in 09 to 2010. There was just a whole lot of nothing. And I grew up during that time. That was like my first few years as a wrestling fan. How I stuck around, I have no idea. I'm one crazy SOB, I guess. But if I had to go back and watch, I mean, other than just to review them, but if I willingly went back and watched every Raw from that time period, I'd be bored after 4 episodes because it's all the same shit. 02 to 03, all about Triple H, but there was still enough good stuff going on, especially in the ring at that point, to make it still more tolerable than the 09 to 2010 time period. At Scarlet1 from Twitter, push repackage release. AJ Styles, Sami Zayn, and Kevin Owens. Good question. Push AJ all day, every day. The guy's fucking money, as are the other 2, but AJ even more so. If I had to choose between Owens and Zayn, which one to release, I'd have to release Zayn and repackage Owens. I think Owens has a higher ceiling. Zayn is great, but I don't think he's as big of a star as Owens is. So I'd repackage Owens, maybe into a baby face, I don't know. Push Styles and release Sami Zayn. What's next for the Cruiserweight division? Well, like I said earlier, they said on 205 Live next week, or last night, they said for next week, we're getting a GM. And we don't know who it is. I am interested to find out, though. I said Rey Mysterio would be a great choice and would make perfect sense. You bring him back in the company. He can wrestle every once in a while. Kind of like Kurt Angle, you know? But he doesn't have to be an active member of the roster. He can be on the show every week, but he doesn't have to wrestle every week. I think that's a great deal. I don't know if he would even want to do it, but just a thought. Beyond that, they said they're going to be crowning a new champion soon. They said the GM will be announcing their plans to determine a new champion when they debut next week. So we'll find out then. It does disappoint me. I won't be able to see Cedric Alexander win the Cruiserweight Championship at the Rumble. I was really looking forward to that. It won't be happening now, unfortunately. But to me, because this thing happened so quickly, Enzo got suspended and then fired the next day. To me, the reason they're waiting until next week to talk about their plans for the championship is because even they have no idea. This was such short notice, and they were going to have a championship match on Sunday that they really don't know what to do. They don't know what to do, so they're going to wait 1 week, think it over, and probably deliver their announcement in regards to what is next for that championship and how they're going to determine a new champion. I would just give it right out to Alexander. No more fucking going through hoops and all this other shit. The guy has been, doing really, really well for himself. He's deserved it. Just give him the championship. Just fucking hand it to him, Triple H style. Why not? It worked for Triple H. Why not Cedric Alexander? But anyway, That's what's next for the Cruiserweight division. With Enzo gone, you know what? Enzo being gone, it's a positive. Because Enzo, I know, like I've said before, he was doing well in the heel role. He was a way better heel than as a babyface on his own. But he was not making 205 Live any better than what it was before. Neville was really the closest thing to making that show worthwhile. And Aries too for a time. But that's really about it, to be honest. Enzo did nothing for 205 Live aside from those first few episodes where he got a lot of buzz and people were talking like, oh, what's he going to do as champion? And they realized that the guy sucks as a wrestler, which most people already knew anyway. And they tuned out and haven't been back since. So, I guess we'll find out. But I like Enzo being gone. They said, 205 Live will never be the same again. So whatever that means, I guess we'll find out. But it would be nice if they started to take the show more seriously going forward and actually focus more on the wrestling. And, I don't know, just giving us stuff that makes me want to tune in. Because I tune in now to review it, but beyond that, the show is just dead. Ice cold. They need a massive reboot of that entire division in order for it to work. Their next question, does the Raw 25th anniversary show rank among the best or worst Raws? Neither. I don't like this notion that, every Raw is either one of the best of all time or the worst of all time. There are Raws that can be, in the middle. It wasn't one of the worst Raws ever. Anyone who says that is fucking out of their minds. And I'm not just saying that because I was there. There was enough good moments on that show to make it a good show. Maybe it wasn't the show that you were hoping for, and I understand that, but still, I thought it was a good show overall, and it was not one of the worst Raws of all time just because they didn't deliver on the hype and it being like such an epic show. You know what I'm saying? So, I would not rank it among one of the worst Raws of all time and all this other shit. People need to kind of stop with that stuff. But anyway, let me see if we're still recording here. Things stopped for a couple seconds. We should still be live. We're live, pal. Yeah, it should still be good. Anyway, it's not among the best either. It's not among the worst or the best. It's just a Raw. It was a good Raw. Wasn't a terrible Raw. Wasn't an amazing Raw. It was a Raw. So it doesn't rank among the best or worst Raws ever. Did you hear that Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler apparently fell asleep during the Raw in Manhattan? Yes, I did. I saw the picture. It's questionable. I know Jim Ross denied it on Twitter. He said, I wasn't sleeping. How could you even suggest such? But it's like, I don't know, dude. It kind of looked like you guys were sleeping. Or nodding off anyway. JR, the picture wasn't the best quality. It wasn't the best quality, so JR could have been just leaning over and could have been just focused on whatever he was reading. Jerry Lawler, it's pretty evident his eyes are closed. So unless he was blinking, it's not a flattering picture at all. And I mean, who can blame these guys? Because the show at the Manhattan Center, nothing fucking happened. So, for the most part. So, if they were sleeping, I can't say I blame them. But I did hear about that. I thought it was pretty funny. What's a good example of a multi-venue show? I can't even really think of any other than WrestleMania 2. And even that was kind of a mess. But at least that they separated into like 3 chunks. They weren't going back and forth. They did the first third at wherever, the second third at wherever, and the third at wherever. I forgot where it was. I know one was in Chicago, I think, but other than that, I have no idea. But yeah, I thought that was a better use of going back and forth. I don't know what the crowds were doing in the meantime, or if the show just started later for them. I have no idea. And it wasn't a great WrestleMania, but I thought it was well done, as opposed to becoming a world champion someday. No, there's not. That window passed a long time ago. Even with the branch of his, that's a good question. Because he's had a lot of good matches he had with Rhino. Would lay out John Cena in 3 years' time on the 25th anniversary of Monday Night Raw. Quite a while there in NXT before they repackaged him as the Drifter later on in the year. But yeah, if you told me that Elias would be laying out John Cena on the 25th anniversary of Raw, I would have still called you crazy. A year ago, was thrown up by Cena in 10 seconds in the Rumble on Sunday. He's merely replacing Samoa Joe in the mini, and it was the fact that Elias was able to lay him out when all eyes are on the product on Monday night, I thought was a very smart booking decision. Final question, I thought it was from Brad, it's actually not. From Tyler L. from Facebook. What's the realistic long-term success of the Street Profits? Well, first of all, Tyler, I apologize. Usually I put the Facebook questions before the Twitter questions, so I'm not sure why I put it last this time. But anyway, Street Profits, love them. Love the characters, love the gimmick, love the theme song. I think these guys can go far on the main roster. A lot farther than Crime Time ever did. Now, they never won championships. They should have, they didn't. But they were over. Crime Time was really, really over. And that was for a pretty stereotypical gimmick and all that other shit. And they really weren't even the best in the ring either. The Street Profits, their gimmick is better. They have a better theme song. Angelo Ford is a star. And maybe that's what they saw in Shad when they broke those two up in like 2010, when they had Shad turn on JTG like out of nowhere. But even that push was very short-lived before they pulled the plug on it, and that was it for Shad as a single star in WWE. JTG would be there for another fucking 4 years after Shad got cut in late 2010. But anyway, yeah, I think the Street Profits can go far in WWE. I really like the tag team. NXT has a lot of good tag teams right now. I like Team 6-1. Glad the video pack. I was very happy with the video packages they've been putting together for them on NXT recently. Authors of Pain obviously have a high ceiling on the main roster. War Machine they just brought in. They got a lot of good tag teams, but I think the Street Profits can go far on either Raw or SmackDown. They have a good connection with the crowd. So I think if they're allowed to do even half the stuff they do at Full Sail and in NXT and house shows and shit like that, they'll be over in no time. Like Enzo and Cass, when they first got called up, they were super over. I don't think I've seen a team that over in NXT since Enzo and Cass with the Street Profits. No, I know DIY was over, and they were a very awesome tag team, but it was a bit different because it was obvious they were two single stars paired together for a temporary goal of winning gold, winning the tag team championships. The Street Profits are way better together than they are apart. Montez Ford can be something on his own. Dawkins, don't have faith that would push him, and they probably shouldn't because he screams generic. But when he's with Ford, they work very well together. Cass and Enzo, kind of the same thing. Enzo's been fired now, so it doesn't even matter. But Cass, don't really care about him much on his own. Don't really give a shit. But when they were together, it was magic. And the main roster ruined them after a few months. So I'm hoping the same thing would not happen to the Street Profits. And I hope they don't get called up as soon as after WrestleMania. I'd pop, but it's I'd wait a little longer. They should win the tag titles in NXT first, unlike Enzo and Cass did, before going to the main roster. Enzo and Cass, when they got called up, it was long overdue. But the Street Profits have only been together in NXT for what? 6 months? 5-6 months? Now is way too soon. Do not pull an Apollo Crews with the Street Profits. Do not ruin what could be good with these guys. They have a very high ceiling on the main roster if they're booked properly. Anyway, folks, that does it for episode 217 of #AskGSM here today for January 24th, 2018. As always, guys, if you want to send in a question, thank you for sending your questions, first of all. If you want to send in a question, you can tweet me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Leave a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop a question on this very video in the comment section down below. I'll include it in next week's edition. So speaking of which, I will be at the Rumble, be at TakeOver, loaded weekend coming up in Philly. So we will have plenty to discuss on next week's episode of #AskGSM. Like I said earlier, guys, check out WrestleRant Radio this Thursday. Immediately downloading to iTunes, so if you're subscribed to the show, you get it outright within seconds. And just subscribe to the show. Check out the episode of the RG and myself previewing and predicting the TakeOver Philadelphia and the Royal Rumble cards for this coming weekend. It's going to be a ton of fun. So anyway, guys, be sure to like this video. Drop a comment, like I said, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. I already put up a bunch of videos from Raw 25 on Monday. Stone Cold Steve Austin's unreal fucking pop. It was crazy. The return of the GMs, the return of the women, the return of the Dudley Boys. A lot of cool footage from Raw 25 and being there from Monday night. Already up here on the channel. With the Royal Rumble weekend coming up, I'm hoping to upload some videos in regards to TakeOver and Rumble and being there after attending those events this coming weekend, maybe on the Monday or Tuesday, depending on how busy I am. So anyway, I got to head to class soon. I got work in a few days also coming up, and then, TakeOver stuff And then Royal Rumble stuff, it's going to be a loaded week even after Raw 25 is already in the books from Monday night. So all that being said, folks, have an awesome rest of your week. Enjoy the Royal Rumble this coming Sunday. I'm Graham Giason Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.